The door slid open with a soft sound, and the man stepped inside without drawing attention. It was late afternoon, the kind of hour when the place was full but not loud. People moved in slow lines, holding coffee cups, checking phones, talking in low voices. In the center of the wide room stood a grand piano, polished and black, its surface catching the light from tall windows. He paused near the entrance, taking it all in. The piano was the first thing he noticed. It always was. Wherever one appeared, his eyes found it before anything else. For a moment, he simply stood there, hands relaxed at his sides, breathing in the space. To others, he looked like just another passerby. Plain jacket, worn shoes, nothing that suggested he belonged near the instrument. He had not planned to stop here. His day had already been long. He had walked more than usual, taken a bus that rattled and groaned, then walked again. His thoughts were heavy, crowded with things he could not change. Still, when he saw the piano through the glass from outside, his steps slowed. Something pulled him in, the same quiet pull he had felt his whole life. People sat around the piano area, some close, some farther back. A few chairs were arranged neatly, though no one was playing at the moment. A small sign rested on a stand nearby. It explained that the piano was for scheduled performers or approved guests only. Most people passed by without reading it. They already assumed who was allowed and who was not. He walked closer, careful not to disturb anyone. Each step felt heavier than the last, not from tired legs, but from memory. He remembered other rooms, other pianos, and other moments when he had stood just like this, wondering if he should speak or stay silent. Many times, he had chosen silence. This time, he did not. He waited for a break in the movement, then approached a staff member standing near the piano. The worker was dressed neatly, holding a clipboard, eyes scanning the crowd. When the man spoke, his voice was calm and soft. "Excuse me," he said. "May I play the piano for a few minutes?" The staff member looked him up and down, not in a cruel way, but with quick judgment. The question was unexpected. The answer felt easy. "I'm sorry," the worker replied. "The piano isn't open right now." The man nodded, as if he had expected this. "I understand," he said. "I won't be long." The worker shook their head. "It's for approved performers only." Nearby, a few people noticed the exchange. A woman with a shopping bag glanced over, then looked away. A couple sitting together whispered something and smiled. To them, it was nothing, just a small moment, already fading. He stood there, hands loosely clasped, eyes returning to the piano. He did not argue. He did not raise his voice. He only asked again, quietly. "I've played before," he said. "I promise I'll be respectful." The worker sighed, clearly uncomfortable now. "I really can't allow that," they said, their tone firm but not unkind. "Please step back." The man stepped aside as asked. Heat rose to his face, though he kept his expression steady. He felt the familiar weight settle in his chest, the one that came when people decided who he was without knowing a single thing about him. He moved toward a nearby wall and leaned lightly against it. From there, he could still see the piano. The bench sat empty. The keys were untouched. It felt strange, like seeing an old friend across a room and being told not to speak. As he waited, memories came quietly, one after another. He remembered the first piano he had ever touched. It was old and missing keys, tucked into a corner of a small building where sound echoed off cracked walls. He had been young then, barely tall enough to reach the bench without climbing. No one had taught him. No one had shown him where to place his fingers. He had learned by listening. He learned by watching others play when they did not know he was there. He learned by copying melodies he heard once and never forgot. When life felt heavy, the piano became a place where his thoughts could breathe. When words failed him, sound did not. Years passed like that, playing when no one was around, stopping when footsteps came too close, carrying music inside without a place to share it. Back in the present, the room grew busier. More people gathered. A child pointed at the piano and tugged on a parent's sleeve. Someone nearby said they hoped a real player would arrive soon. Another laughed. The man listened without reacting. He had learned long ago that talent did not always announce itself. Sometimes, it arrived quietly, wearing clothes that did not impress, carrying a life no one bothered to imagine. A security guard walked by and glanced at him, then at the piano, then back again. The look said enough. "Stay where you are. Don't cause trouble." He adjusted his jacket and stood straighter. Leaving would be easy. It would be safer. No more looks. No more silent judgments. He could walk out and carry the music home with him, like he always did. But something kept him there. He watched the light shift on the piano's surface as clouds passed outside. He noticed how the room seemed to wait without knowing what it waited for. He felt the familiar calm settle in his hands, the kind that came before playing. Even when no keys were beneath his fingers, a few minutes passed. Then more. No performer arrived. No announcement was made. The piano remained untouched. Finally, the staff member returned, speaking with another worker. They glanced at the piano, then at the growing crowd. There was a sense of mild concern now. People were expecting something, anything. The man pushed himself off the wall and stepped forward again, slowly. This time, he did not go straight to the staff. He simply stood near the piano, close enough to feel its presence, far enough to avoid causing alarm. Someone near him whispered, "Is he going to play?" Another voice answered, "I doubt it." He heard them both. He heard everything. His heart beat steadily. Not fast, not slow, just steady. He knew that if the chance came, even for a moment, he would be ready. He always was. The staff member noticed him again and frowned slightly. Before they could speak, a different voice cut through the air. It belonged to an older woman seated nearby. "Why not let him try?" she said, not loudly, but clearly enough. "No one else is playing." A few people turned. The staff hesitated. Rules were rules, but the room was watching now. The man did not speak. He did not smile. He waited. The piano remained silent, but the silence had changed. It was no longer empty. It was full of possibility. And for the first time since he walked in, it felt like the moment might not end the way it usually did. The room felt different after the woman spoke up. It was subtle, but the man noticed it right away. People shifted in their seats. A few stood a little straighter. Eyes moved between him and the piano, as if trying to imagine something they had not expected when they walked in. The staff member hesitated, lips pressed together. They looked toward the other worker, then toward the security guard nearby. No one said anything. The pause stretched just long enough to feel uncomfortable. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," the staff member finally said, not to the man, but to the woman who had spoken. "We have rules." The woman shrugged. "I know," she replied, "but rules don't always know when to bend." A few quiet laughs followed. Not mocking laughs, nervous ones. The kind people make when they sense something is about to happen but don't know what. The man remained still. He kept his hands relaxed at his sides, though inside, his fingers felt awake, almost warm. He had learned long ago not to push moments like this. Pressure made people defensive. Silence sometimes opened doors. Someone else joined in. A middle-aged man standing near the back spoke up, his voice casual. "If he's bad, we lose a few minutes. If he's good, we gain something. Seems fair." The staff member exhaled slowly. They were clearly weighing responsibility against the mood of the room. The piano was meant to add beauty, not tension. And now, tension was exactly what filled the space. "Just for a minute?" the staff member asked, finally turning to the man. The man nodded once. "That's all I need." The worker looked around one last time, then stepped aside. "One song," they said. "Please." A soft ripple of sound moved through the crowd. Not applause, not yet. Something closer to curiosity. The man walked toward the piano. Each step felt slow, not because he hesitated, but because he was aware of every movement. The floor beneath his shoes, the sound of his breathing, the way conversations faded as he approached the bench. He reached the piano and paused. Up close, it looked even more beautiful. The surface reflected his face, older than it once was, marked by time and quiet struggle. He rested his hand lightly on the edge, feeling the smooth wood beneath his fingers. He did not sit right away. Instead, he closed his eyes for a brief moment, just long enough to settle himself. This was not a performance to him. It never was. It was a conversation, one he had been having with himself for most of his life. When he opened his eyes, the room was watching. He sat down slowly on the bench. It creaked softly under his weight. He adjusted his position, scooting forward just a bit, placing his feet flat on the floor. Small movements, familiar ones. A child near the front leaned forward, eyes wide. Someone lifted a phone, then lowered it again, unsure if recording would feel rude. The man lifted the fallboard gently, revealing the keys. White and black, clean and waiting. He hovered his hands above them without touching, as if greeting an old friend he had not seen in a long time. For a second, nothing happened. Then someone coughed. Another person shifted their bag. The room seemed to hold its breath and lose it again. He placed his fingers on the keys. Still, he did not play. His mind drifted, not away from the moment, but deeper into it. He remembered nights when he practiced on broken instruments, pressing keys that stuck or did nothing at all. He remembered playing so softly that only he could hear, afraid of being told to stop. He remembered being told more than once that music was a hobby, not a future, that dreams were nice, but reality was louder. The first note came quietly. It was simple, barely more than a whisper, a single sound that slipped into the room without asking permission. A few people blinked, surprised by how gentle it was. The second note followed, then the third, slow, careful, each one placed with intention. The melody did not rush, it took its time, like it trusted the listener to wait. The room began to change. Conversation stopped completely now. The air felt thicker, warmer. Even the background noise from outside seemed to fade, as if the building itself leaned in to listen. The man's shoulders relaxed as his hands moved. The stiffness he carried earlier melted away. This was where he belonged. Here, no one asked for approval. No one questioned his place. The melody grew, not louder, but fuller. His left hand joined the right, adding depth, shaping the sound into something that felt familiar and new at the same time. People exchanged glances. The staff member who had refused him earlier stood frozen, eyes fixed on the piano. The security guard shifted his weight, arms dropping from their crossed position. The woman who had spoken up closed her eyes, a small smile forming on her face. The music carried emotion without explanation. It spoke of waiting, of being unseen, of hope held quietly for a long time. The man did not look up. He did not need to. He felt the room through the keys, through the way the sound moved and settled. He adjusted his touch, letting certain notes linger, letting others pass quickly, like memories that didn't need revisiting. A tear rolled down someone's cheek near the front. They brushed it away quickly, embarrassed, though no one was looking at them. The melody shifted, becoming stronger now. Not angry, not loud, just sure of itself. The man's fingers moved with confidence that could not be taught. This was not practice. This was lived experience, translated into sound. People who had planned to walk through the space stopped at the edges. They stayed. Something told them they should. The staff member glanced at their watch, then looked away. The one-song limit no longer seemed important. The man leaned slightly into the piano, breathing with the music. Each note felt like an answer to every quiet doubt he had ever carried. When the final chord came, it did not end sharply. It faded slowly, like a sunset slipping behind a building. Silence followed, not the awkward kind, the full kind. The kind that means everyone felt something, but didn't know how to respond yet. The man's hands rested on the keys for a moment longer, then lifted. He sat still, waiting. Then someone clapped. One clap became several. Several became many. The sound filled the room, rising fast and strong. The man stood, stepping back from the bench. He nodded once, not bowing, not smiling widely, just acknowledging the moment. The staff member approached. Expression changed completely. "That was impressive," they said quietly. The man gave a small smile. "Thank you." As the applause continued, he felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not pride, not relief, something gentler. Recognition. And though the moment was already more than he had expected, he did not yet know how much more it was about to become. The applause did not fade quickly. It rolled through the room in waves, some clapping hard, others softly, but all of it steady and real. People stood without realizing they were standing. A few whistled. Others simply smiled at strangers beside them, sharing a feeling they could not explain with words. The man stood near the piano, hands resting loosely at his sides. He felt exposed in a way he was not used to. When he played alone, the music held him. Now, the attention did. It was warm, but also strange. He glanced toward the staff member, then toward the crowd. His instinct was to step away, to disappear back into the quiet edges of life, where he felt safe. But something made him stay. Not courage exactly, more like curiosity. He wanted to see what would happen next. The applause slowly settled, but the room remained focused on him. No one rushed back to their phones. No one turned away. It felt as if time had stretched just a little. A voice called out from the back, "Can you play another?" A few people laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt right. The staff member hesitated, then nodded. "Go ahead," they said. "Take your time." The man returned to the bench, moving more easily now. The piano no longer felt like something he had to earn. It felt like something that had been waiting. He sat and placed his hands on the keys again. This time, he looked up briefly. Faces stared back at him, open and expectant. He took a breath and began. The second piece was different. Where the first had been gentle and reflective, this one carried motion. It moved like a journey, rising and falling, sometimes playful, sometimes heavy. His fingers traveled across the keys with confidence built from years of quiet repetition. As he played, his mind wandered through his past, not as a distraction, but as fuel. He remembered the place where he grew up. Small rooms, thin walls, sounds from neighbors slipping through at all hours. Music had been rare there. Silence was more common. The piano he practiced on most often belonged to no one in particular. It sat in a public space that was usually empty in the evenings. He learned the schedule, learned when no one would come. He treated that piano like a secret friend. When it was taken away for repairs one winter, he felt the loss like a real goodbye. He remembered being told to focus on something practical. He remembered nodding, agreeing, while knowing that music was the only thing that ever made sense to him. Those memories flowed into the sound now. The music grew bolder, more alive. People leaned forward again. Some closed their eyes. Others held their breath without noticing. A man near the front wiped his eyes openly this time. No one judged him. When the second piece ended, the applause returned even stronger. Someone near the window began recording without hesitation now. Another person clapped above their head. The man stood again, heart pounding harder than before. He gave a small bow, unsure what else to do. That was when people began to speak to him. "You're incredible," someone said. "Where did you learn to play like that?" asked another. "Do you perform here often?" The questions came gently, without pressure, but there were many of them. He answered as best he could, keeping his words simple. "I learned on my own," he said. "I don't perform here," he added. He did not explain everything. He did not need to. The staff member returned with a cup of water and offered it to him. "You should take a break," they said. Smiling now, he accepted the water, nodding in thanks. His hands trembled slightly as he drank. Adrenaline still moved through him, unfamiliar and bright. The older woman who had first spoken up approached him slowly. "I'm glad you stayed," she said. "So am I," he replied honestly. She studied his face for a moment. "You've been carrying that music a long time," she said. He did not ask how she knew. Some people simply saw it out as people continued to gather round. The man noticed something else. The looks had changed. Earlier, there had been doubt, dismissal, polite distance. Now, there was respect, not because he asked for it, but because he earned it without trying. A few people asked if he had recordings, a page online, somewhere they could hear more. He shook his head. "I just play," he said. That answer surprised them. He stepped away from the piano again, giving space as the crowd buzzed with conversation. He watched them from a small distance, feeling both part of it and separate from it. For the first time, he wondered what it might feel like to be heard more often, not famous, not celebrated, just heard. The thought scared him a little. He walked toward the window, looking outside. The sky had shifted into evening. Lights flickered on along the street. Life continued, unaware of what had just happened inside. Behind him, the piano sat quietly again. But it no longer felt silent. It felt full. The staff member approached once more, this time with a different tone. "We have events here," they said. "Live music nights. You should consider coming back." The man nodded slowly. "Maybe," he said. It was not a promise, but it was not a refusal either. As the crowd slowly thinned, a few people stayed behind, lingering near the piano, as if hoping for one more note. The man felt a gentle pull to play again, but he resisted it. He had already given enough for one day. He picked up his jacket and prepared to leave. As he moved toward the exit, people stepped aside for him, smiling, nodding, small gestures, but meaningful ones. At the door, he paused and looked back one last time. The piano stood exactly where it had been when he arrived. Nothing about it had changed, and yet everything felt different. He stepped outside into the cool air. The sounds of the street wrapped around him, loud and uneven. He took a deep breath, letting it fill his lungs. As he walked away, the music stayed with him, not as something hidden this time, but as something shared. He did not know what would come next. He only knew that a door he had never expected to open had cracked, just slightly, and for the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to wonder what might be on the other side. The next morning arrived quietly, but his mind did not. He woke before the alarm, staring at the ceiling as light crept in through the window. The events from the day before replayed again and again, not like a dream, but like something unfinished. The sound of the piano still seemed close, as if the notes had followed him home and settled into the room. He sat up slowly and rested his elbows on his knees. For a long time, music had lived only inside him or in empty rooms. Now it had been heard, seen, remembered. That change felt heavier than he expected. He went through his morning routine without much thought. Water on his face, a simple breakfast, the same worn jacket. Outside, the city moved the way it always did. People hurried past him, unaware that anything had shifted. That almost made him laugh. On the bus, he noticed a few people staring at their phones, smiling. He wondered, just for a moment, if one of them had been there, if they were watching a short clip of him playing, shared by someone he would never meet. The thought made his chest tighten. When he got off and walked the rest of the way, his steps slowed near a music shop. He passed it often, rarely going in. The instruments behind the glass always felt too bright, too untouched. That day, he stopped inside. The smell of wood and polish filled the air. A few guitars hung along the wall. A keyboard sat near the back. He walked through the space quietly, running his fingers along the edge of a shelf. No one approached him at first. Finally, a worker looked up and smiled. "Let me know if you need anything," they said. He nodded and thanked them. He did not explain why he was there. He wasn't sure himself. He stood in front of the keyboard for a while, not playing, just looking. It wasn't the same as a piano, but it carried the same promise. The idea that sound could exist simply because someone chose to create it. After a few minutes, he left the shop without buying anything. Still, something inside him felt lighter, like he had acknowledged a part of himself he had been keeping quiet. The rest of the day passed slowly. He took care of small responsibilities, answered messages he had ignored before. Each task felt ordinary, but beneath it all ran a quiet current of change. That evening, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hello, this is the place where you played yesterday. We were wondering if you'd be open to coming back this weekend." He stared at the screen for a long time. His first instinct was to say no, to protect the small, safe space he had always lived in. Being seen once was already more than he had planned for. But another part of him, a part he had ignored for years, stirred. He typed a short reply. "I can come by." The response came quickly. "That would be wonderful. Thank you." He set the phone down and let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The days leading up to the weekend felt longer than usual. He practiced when he could, on a borrowed keyboard, on imagined keys when none were available. He played softly at night, careful not to disturb anyone. Still, he played with more freedom than before. He thought about the crowd, about the way the room had felt when people truly listened. He told himself not to expect that again. Moments like that were rare. When the day came, he arrived earlier than before. The space was quieter, chairs arranged neatly. A small sign now read "Live music tonight." Seeing it made his stomach flutter. The staff greeted him warmly, not as someone asking for permission, but as someone expected. "Take your time," one of them said. "Whenever you're ready." He nodded and approached the piano. This time, no one stopped him. As people began to arrive, he sat and played softly, warming up, letting the room fill naturally. Conversations flowed around the music instead of over it. Some people recognized him, others didn't. That was fine. When the room felt full enough, he began in earnest. The music that night was deeper, more honest. He wasn't trying to impress. He wasn't proving anything. He was simply sharing. The audience listened in a way that felt different from before. Less surprise, more trust. Between pieces, people clapped gently. Some smiled at him, some closed their eyes again. The energy was calm, steady, real. At one point, he looked up and caught sight of the older woman from before. She nodded at him, as if to say, "You're exactly where you should be." He played for over an hour, losing track of time. When he finally stopped, the applause was warm and full. Not loud, but lasting afterward. People spoke to him quietly, thanking him. One person said the music reminded them of home. Another said it helped them breathe easier. Those words stayed with him later. As he packed up to leave, the staff member approached again. "You have something special," they said. "Not just skill, presence." He didn't know how to respond to that. He simply nodded. Walking home that night, he felt tired in a good way. The city lights seemed softer, the air cooler. He realized that even if nothing else came of this, something had already changed. He was no longer waiting for permission. He was choosing, one note at a time, to be heard. The weeks that followed did not turn his life upside down. They didn't come with loud headlines or sudden promises. Instead, they arrived quietly, one small moment at a time. The way most real changes do. He returned to the space more than once. Sometimes it was busy, sometimes nearly empty. Each time, the piano waited for him, steady and familiar. He no longer felt the need to ask. He greeted the staff with a nod, exchanged a few words, then sat down and played when the moment felt right. People began to recognize him. Not everyone, not always, but enough. Some stopped to listen for a few minutes before moving on. Others stayed longer, settling into chairs, letting the music become part of their day. A few returned again on different evenings, smiling when they saw him, as if greeting an old friend. He noticed the change in himself too. The nervous tightness that once sat in his chest before playing slowly eased. In its place came a quiet confidence, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that knows when it belongs. One evening, a young boy stood near the piano for a long time, watching his hands move. When the song ended, the boy looked up and asked, "Did someone teach you?" The man shook his head. "I listened," he said. The boy thought about that, then nodded as if it made perfect sense. Another night, a woman sat near the back with her eyes closed the entire time. When he finished, she approached him with tears on her face and thanked him. She didn't explain why. She didn't have to. Moments like these stayed with him longer than applause ever could. At home, he began to play differently too. He no longer rushed through pieces or stopped when doubt crept in. He allowed mistakes to pass without judgment. He let the music breathe. Sometimes, late at night, he thought back to the first moment he had been refused. How small and invisible he had felt standing there. How close he had come to leaving. He wondered how many others walked away every day, carrying something beautiful inside them, simply because no one had paused long enough to listen. The thought stayed heavy, but it also gave him purpose. One afternoon, he arrived to find the piano surrounded by a small crowd already waiting. Word had spread quietly. No posters, no announcements, just people telling people. He felt the old nervousness return, but it no longer controlled him. He sat down and began. The music that day felt like a conversation with everyone in the room. It moved gently, then rose with strength, then softened again. It spoke of patience, of loss, of hope that doesn't shout, but lasts. When he finished, the room was silent for a long moment before the applause came. He stood and thanked them, his voice steady. Someone asked if he would ever record his music. He thought about it. "Maybe," he said, and for the first time, the word felt real. As time passed, he noticed something else. Other musicians began to appear. A violinist one evening, a singer another. The space slowly became what it was meant to be. Open, alive. He welcomed them without jealousy. Music was not a competition to him. It was a shared language. One night, he arrived to find a handwritten note resting on the piano. "Thank you for reminding us to listen." He read it twice, then folded it carefully and placed it in his pocket. That night, he played longer than usual. The final piece was simple, just a few repeating notes, gentle and honest. As the sound faded, he felt a deep sense of calm settle over him. When he stood, the applause was warm and unhurried. People did not rush away. They lingered, as if reluctant to break the feeling. As he packed up, the staff member who had once refused him approached. "I'm glad you didn't leave that day," they said quietly. "So am I," he replied. Outside, the city moved on as it always had. Cars passed. Lights flickered. People hurried toward their own lives. He walked home at an easy pace, the night air cool against his face. He no longer felt like he was carrying something alone. Music had found its way into the open. He knew there would still be days when doubt returned, days when the world felt too loud, too fast. But now he also knew that one moment of courage, one choice to stay instead of leave, could change more than he ever expected. The piano would not always be there. The crowd would not always listen. But the music would remain, and so would he. Not as someone seeking permission, but as someone who understood his own worth. All it had taken was one refusal, followed by one brave decision to be heard.